Part 1. Ledger and Rain. My name is Evelyn May Carter, 75, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Call me Miss Evie like the nurses used to. I'm on my porch with mint tea, watching the mail truck skim past hedges I trimmed myself. The street stays quiet. I keep it that way. Learned how the hard way. I was born 1950 in Pine Hollow, Arkansas. Walter, my father, ran a feed and hardware store with a ledger he guarded like a Bible and a temper he lit like a match. Ruth, my mother, stitched christening gowns and funeral veils on the same singer. I learned neat seams and neat silence in that kitchen. Safe ground was Aunt Bee's shotgun house by the creek. She caught babies in kitchens and smokehouses when the clinic had more paint than beds. I carried boiled cloths, timed breaths, and memorized the beat. Breathe, push, rest. Hands steady, mind sharp, she'd say, cinching a cord with a motion neat as tying a ribbon. That cadence stuck. School ended. I took vocational nursing in Fort Smith. 19. The week I pinned my cap, I hired on at St. Agnes. There I met Daniel Pierce. Brown hair, quick hands, a man who listened before he spoke. We got engaged after Christmas, set a summer date, rented a slouching duplex with a clean tub. Spring brought a missed period and a small certainty. We married on a Tuesday in the rectory. No lace, no crowd, just vows and a ring that fit right. September heat clung to paint. Labor started on a Sunday at Aunt Bee's. She wanted me close where she could watch the clock and my color. Mama arrived with broth, laid a cool rag on my neck, and quoted a psalm without the quaver. By dusk, the panes stacked tight. Ivory soap, boiled water, oil lamp, plain tools, good enough. The door burst. Walter filled the frame with whiskey and noise. "So here you hide," he said, stumbling forward, eyes hard enough to cut rope. "Shame my name and bring a stranger's child into my county." Aunt Bee stepped between us, sparrow-sized, hawk-hearted. He shoved her. She struck the table. Mama cried out. He leaned over me, fists like clamps on my shoulders. "Shouldn't have been born, neither of you." Then weight, wrong, crushing across my belly. The world went white. Neighbors stormed the porch, boots, hands, the screen door snapping. They hauled him out. The damage stayed. I woke under hospital tiles with a familiar crack. Arms empty. Nurses didn't need words. Mama held on. Aunt Bee stood like a fence post, jaw set. The chaplain tried syllables. I watched the clock. Daniel reached me next morning, coat collar rain damp. He didn't speak first. He said a steady breath and let mine match it. When I could talk, I told it straight. Door, words, hands. He listened, face still, eyes colder than I'd ever seen. "Where is he?" "Jail. Sheriff releases him if I don't sign." I thought about Mama, my little sister down the road, names in bulletins. Daniel nodded once. "You don't need a courtroom to stop a man," he said. "Rest. I'll handle what keeps you from healing." I refused the paper. Walter walked free by supper and slid back onto the bar stool that had learned his shape. Daniel quit asking permission and started asking for facts. Where's the farm deed? Which bank holds the note? Who notarizes fast? Revenge doesn't require shouting. It needs a pen, a clock, and patience. Rumors rose like mist. Feed weighed an ounce light. The church plate counted a 10 short. A supplier never paid. I didn't ask if Daniel planted any. I noticed they arrived in sequence like boxcars, enough momentum that no one wanted to stand on the tracks. He moved the real pieces clean. A sealed bid on Oak Ridge, Walter's last asset, filed under a power of attorney I signed with a calm hand and a straight back. a bank officer who chose policy over pity, a notary who checked dates like a metronome. Daniel never raised his voice. He checked each line twice, folded the deed once, slid it into his coat like a borrowed heartbeat. Sale day brought sidewise rain. I watched from the clerk's hallway while men shook hands under tin. Walter lurched across the square, jacket sagging, hair plastered, shouting words the wind chewed. The deputy and process server stood like a gate. Daniel stepped close enough for reading lips. You took a child. I took your ground. Live with that. Walter folded on the steps, palms over eyes, body shivering like a sentence missing its subject. Daniel set the envelope on our table like a tray. Your name's on it, he said. Sell, keep, burn. Your choice. I looked once and slid it back. Sell. School won't pay itself. We took the check, left Pine Hollow inside a week, and rented an upstairs walk-up in Tulsa where the bakery clerk didn't know our history. I finished my RN, then midwifery, then high-risk obstetrics. Daniel joined a clinic with battered stools and spotless instruments. We wrote a rule book. Freeze accounts before you argue. Never sign deeds off a counter without a witness you choose. No verification calls. Important things in writing twice. I taught it on night shift before anyone called such talks in service. Work ran on lines and timing. Nights on L&D, home for a shower, back for triage. A dozen babies a week in rooms full of stories I wasn't there to narrate. When mothers asked if they were strong enough, I gave instructions, not poetry. Breathe here, turn now, push with a contraction, not fear. My hands remembered Aunt B even when my throat stayed quiet. We opened a small clinic off the bus line. Soft lamps, hard rules. Teenagers walked in, scared and left with facts. Grandmothers came in with blood pressure like sky maps and left with pills and a Thursday appointment. My clipboard kept 4 columns. Name, need, next, done. Boxes got checked. People got steadier. Once a month we ran Paper Wolves Night in the church hall. Title clerks, bank tellers, deacons, a sheriff or two. I showed how SIM swaps work with a $5 card in 15 minutes, how forged headers look when you strip them, how to spot a fake mobile notary by the stamp he bought online. We printed a flyer for every bulletin. No emergency trusts. No aunt holds. No signatures at the door. If anyone insisted, we met them under fluorescent lights with a coffee pot and a copy machine that always apologized. Time didn't soften the ledger. Walter died 3 years later in a rented room. I heard the way you hear weather, sideways, through someone else's errand. I felt nothing that required a chair. Oak Ridge turned into public land for college kids counting birds. Good. Let it keep something alive. Daniel and I never had another baby. That night had said no and meant it. We filled the space with work and people. Clinic Christmases, porch Julys. A pew row claimed more by habit than faith. When Daniel's heart stopped in a hospital hall, he held a chart and a pen mid-order. I took the pen and finished it, went home, wound the clock, wrote a list. Grief ignores plans. Plans still help. Now I teach Thursdays at the community center. I bring a plastic pelvis, a Doppler, a stack of fake documents, and a bag of burners. I show young nurses how to catch babies without panic and catch scams without blinking. Half blood pressure, half paperwork, I say. Both save lives. If you came for a soft ending, I don't sell them. I have a porch, a ticking watch, and a neighborhood that calls before signing anything. Walter's old ledger sits on my closet shelf, cracked spine out. I keep it to remember that numbers tell truth or bury it depending on who holds the pencil. Here's the whole trick, boiled down. Flip the switch, read the line, lock what matters. Teach the next person. Pain arrives. Use it like a tool, not a pillow. And if a man shows up with a folder and a smile, walk him to a counter with witnesses and brew coffee while you read. Paper wolves hate bright rooms and slow readers. My garden needs water, the mailbox needs oil, and the clinic copier needs another apology. I'll handle those before lunch. Tonight the church hall will fill with folding chairs and folks bringing bills and questions. We'll make 3 stacks. Keep, call, shred. Someone will try to hand me a speech about resilience. I'll hand them a pen. Name here, I'll say. Plan there. That's part 1. The rest? Steps, not speeches. Part 2. The setup. Tuesday, I swapped porch tea for errands. The clinic copier jammed like it had a grudge. I cleared it with a butter knife and left a note. Buy proper tool. On the way out, Mrs. Donnelly from 2 streets over waved me down, envelope in hand. They say it's just for a week, she said. Put my deed in a family trust, clean up a clerical encumbrance, then back to me. Mobile notary at 4. Sound right, Miss Evie? I read the letter. Logos stacked like pancakes, a Gmail address pretending to be a law office, and the old trick line, temporary title hold with an aunt as trustee. They'd even penciled a church reference at the bottom. My church. Sloppy. No, I said. We're going to do 3 things. Call your bank, call the recorder, call the sheriff. She handed me her phone before I finished the sentence. Bank first. I said, fraud freeze, gave parcel number and her last 4. The manager knew my voice from clinic fundraisers. We'll flag her profile and put in-person verification only, she said. Recorder next. I asked them to place a caution on the parcel. Public note. Do not accept deeds without counter verification. The clerk stamped it while we were still on the line. Sheriff last. Ramos rolled up 20 minutes later in an unmarked sedan that fooled no one. He listened, thumbed the fake letter, and said, Diner at 6. Bring the papers. We'll keep the notary appointment. Just change the room. I used the afternoon well. At the church office, I borrowed the youth room whiteboard and sketched a map of Dixon's. Door, counter, booths, the camera blind spot by the pie case. I marked exits with a red marker and wrote, Sit with your back to the wall, never the window. Old habit. At 4 sharp, a text pinged Mrs. Donnelly. On my way, please have ID and utility bill. I smiled. They always want the bill. It fakes legitimacy. I told her to reply, meet at Dixon's, booth by the window. My niece wants pie. The niece would be me. 6 o'clock. Dixon's smelled like coffee boiled since last century, and onions that refused to retire. I took the outer booth, left side free, purse on my lap, button mic under my collar. Ramos sat at the counter pretending to debate meatloaf. They came as a pair. Man in a charcoal suit with 2 shiny shoes. Called himself Trent Malloy, family consultant. Woman with a tote bag and a haircut bought in a hurry. Nora Bell, notary public. Their smiles didn't reach their ears. Mrs. Donnelly, Trent said, sliding into the bench. Simple cleanup. You initial here, here, and we hold title for 7 days tops. Avoids a tax trigger. My aunt will serve as neutral trustee. Your aunt again, I said, scooting in like I belonged. Small world. He missed a beat. Nora didn't. She produced a stamp and an ID log from her tote. Real seal, wrong script. I let my cheaters dangle and read the deed upside down. Quit claim from Donnelly to Bell Family Trust. Not Nora, some other Bell. Then a trust document naming Cypress Partners LLC as manager. Beneficiary line empty. They'd meant to fill it after signatures with the name they liked best. I tapped the blank with my pen. Who gets this? Same as always, Trent said. You remain beneficiary. Except it says nothing, I said. Also, your parcel ID drops a digit. Clerical, he smiled. Clerical gets folks evicted. Ramos sipped coffee he didn't want. The waitress refilled mine and said loud enough for the mic, "Pie later?" Bless her. I pressed the mic twice with my thumb, then spoke plain. Here's how we'll do it. You'll explain the encumbrance. You'll show the attorney of record. You'll leave a business card. I laid a certified copy of the recorder's caution on the formica like a badge. Yellow band across the top. Notice on file. Trent didn't blink. He laid down a card. Malloy and Associates, estate transition. A domain I could tell was built last Tuesday. Nora set the notary log open to a page with 3 fresh names. Folks I knew from choir. Bad feeling. You already signed 3 today, I said to Nora. Mobile work, she said. Where? Front porches. Never again, I said. From now on, counters and witnesses. Trent slid a manila envelope across. Sign here, and we're done. I opened it. Top page, Donnelly Bell Family Trust. Second, Trust Cypress Partners, manager. Third, assignment of beneficial interest blank. Fourth, authorization to speak for bank and county, pre-filled with Donnelly's name, forged signature near perfect, only the capital D bent wrong. I lifted it and looked at Nora. You notarized that? She swallowed. I prepared the space. You stamped it, I said. Her eyes darted to Trent's hand. His knuckles had gone white. Ramos stood and set his mug down like a gavel. Evening, folks, he said. Mind if I see your packet? He didn't wait for permission. He flipped, photographed, bagged. Ms. Bell, that's your seal? Yes. Logbook? Yes. 3 porch signings today? She nodded. We'll need addresses and names. And the stamp. Now. Trent tried charm. Sheriff, this is a civil... Then you'll love civil court, Ramos said. Tonight we're doing criminal housekeeping, forgery, attempted theft, notary violations. Trent's eyes cut to the door. He measured distance and lost. Ramos's partner drifted from the back booth, and the path shrank by half. Trent sat still. Who's upstream? I asked. No one builds a site and a trust this sloppy without a teacher. Counsel advises, Trent started. You don't have counsel, I said. You have a template. Nora cracked first. They always do. The ones with real stamps and soft centers. He said it was standard, she muttered. Hold the title for a week, clean a cloud, return it, take a fee. He promised the beneficiary lines get filled with the owner's name after funding. By whom? Ramos asked. By Cypress, she said. Office in Sand Springs. Suite number 204. Trent hissed her name. She went quiet. Too late. We left with a packet of fraud and a schedule. Ramos collected Nora's seal and log, gave her a card, and told her to come in at 9 with every address she'd seen that week. Trent signed for his own property bag. Phone, 2 debit cards, a pocket notebook. He wrote slow. Handwriting tells on a man. Slanted right, letters thin, speed and nerve. Outside, rain started for real. Ramos tucked the envelope deeper under his jacket. Tomorrow we knock Suite 204, he said. You staying out of the hallway? I'll be across the street, I said, counting windows. We didn't wait for tomorrow to do the rest. Mrs. Donnelly and I drove straight to the bank, after hours, but the manager stayed late. We placed an in-branch only note on her profile, gutted text recovery, added a verbal passphrase. No one could guess unless they knew her wedding song and the dog she had at 13. Recorder's office sent a digital flag to every title company within the county. Donnelly Parcel. Verify in person. I forwarded the flag to the 3 offices that see the most quick cleans. Back home, I opened a red folder labeled, "If You're Tired." It's what people look for without thinking. And dropped in copies. The fake trust, the authorization, the log page, Nora's surrendered seal photo. On my fridge, I wrote a short list. Malloy, who hosts the domain. Cypress, lease, manager, sweet neighbors, choir names, verify porch signatures. Sheriff, warrant language for electronics. Morning came like it always does, without applause. By 8, I'd fed the cat, watered tomatoes, and stood across from a brick low-rise with sunburned blinds on the 2nd floor and a directory that hadn't kept up. Cypress Partners wasn't on it. Suite 204 held Red Oak Media. 2 doors over, a mailbox store. Down the hall, a virtual office placard with a QR code. Ramos arrived with 2 deputies and a warrant tight as a drum. The building manager let us in with a set of keys attached to a teddy bear fob. Suite 204 looked like a catalog shot had given up. Ring light, folding table, plastic fern, a printer still warm, a stack of trust kits, and a whiteboard with a flowchart. Elder Aunt Trust Manager, Refi Assign. In the corner, 4 prepaid phones in their boxes. On the desk, the same template we'd seen at Dixon's, with 3 other surnames typed and waiting. I photographed everything on my side of the tape while deputies handled the bags. Ramos read off items like a cashier. Laptops, phones, stamp sets, a notary manual with 4 pages dog-eared, and a legal pad with a to-do list that ended with Dixon's 6 p.m. They'd run this play more than once. We split tasks. I took choir names and drove. 2 porches later, I had answers. Both widows had signed permission to speak, thinking it was a mail forwarding form. One had already gotten a call from a bank auditor testing her verbal password with a grandmother's maiden name he'd somehow scraped. I changed her passphrase to the street of her first kiss. She laughed, then wrote it down and stuck it under a magnet shaped like a cow. I made her move it. Back at the station, Nora sat in a small room with a big clock, pencils stacked like a fence. She made a clean list. Every porch, every time, every envelope. Trent sat in another room rearranging silence, asking for a lawyer whose number didn't pick up. Cypress existed on paper only. LLC filed last week by a formation mill 2 states over. Manager line filled with a P.O. box and a smile. By noon, we had enough. Ramos called the AG's office. They sent an analyst with neat hair and a laptop that ate PDFs like candy. He drew a map on the screen. Lead lists from church bulletins and obituaries, porch signings, trust shell refinance shop, cash out reloadable cards. 9 arrows, 3 counties, 1 pattern. I like patterns. They die in daylight. We ran cleanup fast. Title companies got a memo. Banks got a banner in their systems. Pastors got a script for Sunday. No one from the church will ever ask you to sign a deed. If they do, bring them to the fellowship hall and let us introduce them to Sheriff Ramos. The library added a workshop called Deeds and Wolves. Tuesday at 6. I made the slides with big type and no mercy. At 4, we returned to Dixon's for pie we'd earned the day before. The waitress poured coffee and leaned in. "Saw that man's shoes," she said. "Knew he wasn't from here." "Shoes tell," I said. "So do stamps." Mrs. Donnelly walked in with a paper bag. She set it on the table like an offering. Inside, her original deed, her paid tax receipt, and a photo of her parents on the porch in 1962. "I put copies in the safe deposit," she said. "And I told my nephew if anybody wants signatures, they can meet at the bank under lights." "Good," I said. "Keep the habit." Here's the part you can use if you're taking notes. Scammers don't invent new doors. They repaint old ones. They say temporary and ant and clerical and hope you're tired. Don't be. Sit at a counter. Read every line out loud. Call someone who knows which knob is which. If their shoes are too shiny and their stamp too eager, order pie and dial the sheriff. Tomorrow we'll finish with Suite 204. Leases, IPs, who paid for the ring light. After that, I'll be back on the porch with mint tea and a list. The street will stay quiet because we keep it that way. Together, with pens, not speeches. Part 3. The Source. Morning broke sharp and blue. I swapped garden gloves for a legal pad and met Ramos in a conference room that smelled like dry markers and old coffee. The AG analyst, neat hair, quicker fingers, had turned Suite 204's laptops inside out. "They don't hunt randomly," he said, tapping the screen. "They buy names." He pulled up an invoice. Heartland Outreach, LLC, compassion lists. The product made me taste metal. Columns labeled recent bereavement, church attendance, property free and clear, over 70. A pipeline dressed as charity. "Address?" I asked. "Industrial Park off 169, he said. "Unit 7C. We rolled out in 2 cars. Unmarked sedan up front, me behind with a thermos and a mouthful of nails I didn't spit. Unit 7C squatted between a tire wholesaler and a banner print shop. The sign read, Heartland Community Services. Soft fonts, cross logo, open sign glowing. Inside, it was cubicles and headsets. Air freshener fighting a losing battle. A woman with a headset around her neck greeted us with a church voice smile. "We connect resources to seniors," she said. Her name tag read, Kim. Ramos held up his badge. The smile didn't reach survival distance. "Are you a charity?" I asked. "We're a social enterprise," she said, "which is business with excuses." The analyst showed her the invoice. She flinched like paper bit. "We sell outreach lists to vetted partners," she said. "Church bulletins, obituaries, property rolls, public info. We just tidy it." Ramos gestured to a side office. We stepped in. Whiteboard calendar, a trophy for regional growth, and a server closet humming like a beehive. The analyst read off client names. Cypress Partners, Malloy Associates, Sunland Trust Cleaners. Same costume, different actors. I pointed at a stack of boxes by the printer. Welcome kits stamped in teal. Inside, a glossy brochure, a beneficiary template pre-filled with the brochure writer's favorite LLC, and a prepaid return envelope. They weren't hunting, they were farming. "Warrants cover the server?" Ramos asked. "They do now," the analyst said, sending a text. 10 minutes later, a tech team arrived with cases that looked like violin coffins, and the hive found new keepers. Kim folded into a chair. "We never called anyone," she said. "We just cleaned lists." "Then you know who does the calling," I said. "Give us contracts and refund your conscience later." We left with a drive image, a contract binder, and a number for the owner, who was out of state until Tuesday. Translation, out of reach until someone knocks twice. Next stop, the banner shop next door. I like printers. They tell on people. The manager, a man with ink in his cuticles, didn't bother with pleasantries. They pay cash, he said, flipping a job log. Rush work, trust kits, pop-up banners for senior resource fairs. Same fonts, always the fake crest. I keep proofs. He handed over a folder thick as a phone book. Back at the station, the analyst plotted the pipeline on a screen the size of a chalkboard. Heartland scrapes, lists shells, buy data, resource fair, flyers, lure signatures, porch signings, finish the job, refinance shop cashes out. Lines fanned across 3 counties like a bad irrigation scheme. I took one line personally. Senior Resource Fair, Eastside Community Hall, Thursday 2nd p.m. That was today. We didn't roll in with lights. We rolled in with clipboards and sharp eyes. Folding tables lined the hall. Free blood pressure checks, a basket of hard candy, pens with names you wouldn't trust to hold your dog. The Cypress booth had a banner with hands cupping a paper house. Trent stood behind it in a new tie. Nora wasn't there. Her stamp sat in an evidence bag across town. I wore my clinic badge and a smile as thin as thread. "What do you offer?" I asked. "Title cleanup for folks with minor clouds," Trent said. "Just signatures to pre-qualify. Free." He held out a pen like a flower. An usher from my church, Tommy, knees bad, heart good, hovered with a clipboard. "Miss Evie, they say it helps keep probate away," he said. His thumb shook on the line next to his name. I put my hand over the board. "Tommy, help me set up the coffee urn," I said. He followed like a man saved from a pothole he hadn't seen. Ramos's team drifted in ones and twos. A deputy leaned on the wall like he'd been born there. The analyst stood near the exit, phone in his palm, face neutral. I waited until Trent reached for his first pre-qualification packet, then stepped between his hand and the paper. "Booth is closed," I said. "Wrong licenses, wrong promises, wrong room." He tried the grin. "We're registered." "Good," Ramos said behind me. "Then this won't take long." He read the event permit conditions. No financial services without on-site compliance officer. No document execution without venue witness. The fair manager, hairnet, clipboard, terror, nodded along. Trent went pale, then clever. "We're just collecting interest," he said. "Then you don't need signatures," I said, and plucked the pens from the table one by one, dropping them into my purse like dead snakes. A slow clap started by the coffee. Sister Alma from the choir, warrior in a cardigan. "Tables on the left help you live," she said, pointing at the blood pressure station. "Tables on the right help themselves." Folks shifted left. We bagged the forms, the banner, the leftover kits. A young man in a polo I didn't recognize slipped toward the door with a box tucked tight to his ribs. The analyst intercepted and lifted the lid. Inside, thumb drives and a lead sheet labeled "Widow, High Equity." My throat went cold. I took the sheet and scanned names I knew. 15 green checks, 6 yellows. I circled the yellows. "We're going to call these people today," I said. By dusk, we'd made all 6 calls. 2 had already met mobile notaries. We set appointments at the courthouse instead. Counters, witnesses, coffee. One widow told me a voice on the phone had known her son-in-law's name, her church pew, the model of her mower. "How?" she asked. I looked at the lead sheet and thought of Heartland's server whirring like a hive. "We'll turn that off," I said, "and we'll put a lock on your gate." We walked through her house, froze bank recovery, said a passphrase that lived nowhere but her head, put family names on a paper labeled call list with boxes next to each. I like boxes. Night caught up. I ate a sandwich at my kitchen counter and laid the fare's haul in rows. Kits, pens, thumb drives, a business card with Suite 204 crossed out, and P.O. Box 117 written in. I called the mailbox store. "Hours?" I asked. "Till 9, the clerk said. "Owner's just in to pick up the last bundle." Good. Ramos met me there in 5. We stood by the greeting cards rack, while a man with careful hair and a coat too dark for July opened box 117 and slid the mail into a leather folio. He turned, nearly collided with Ramos's badge, and attempted a smile that had never seen his eyes. "Evening," he said. "Evening, Mr. Owner out of state," Ramos replied, and reached for the folio. Inside, contracts, a check from Sunland Trust Cleaners to Heartland Outreach, a sheet of talk tracks with underlines on the words temporary and family, and a map with circles around 3 community halls, the one we'd just shut and 2 next week. The man sighed like a tire losing air. "It's not illegal to sell data," he said. "It's illegal to sell wolves a map to the pasture," I said, "especially when you teach them the fence schedule." They took him in quiet. No cuffs in the lobby, no spectacle, just a door closing and a bell that jingled once like it had seen this before. Back home, I wrote the lesson for Thursday's class. Find the source. Clip the line. Warn the herd. Under it, I added steps for any nurse who works in a town like ours. When a patient mentions a porch signing, call the recorder with them. Teach passphrases that aren't birthdays or dogs. Post the red flyer on every break room board. No ants, no temporary, no porches. Keep a who to call list on paper in every kitchen you love. Tomorrow we'll stand in a courtroom and say the words that make servers change hands. After that, I'll print the lead names on big paper and sit by the phone with a thermos while the church bell marks the hour. Bad men build pipelines. We build switches. The street outside is quiet again. Not because it forgets, but because we remember who to call, where to stand, when to lift a pen, and when to take one away. Part 4. The Refinance. By sunrise, we had lists, not speeches. I packed a thermos, 3 highlighters, and a folder marked Cypress Chain. Ramos texted one word, Refi, and an address on Admiral where payday lenders grow like weeds. Prairie Capital. Title and refinance looked respectable from 10 feet. Glass doors, potted ficus, a poster of a couple smiling at paperwork. Up close, it smelled like toner and urgency. A receptionist with a headset said their senior solutions specialist could see us at 10. We were early on purpose. I walked the waiting room counting tells. A wall rack stuffed with beneficiary assignment forms. A clipboard already filled at the top line with sample that looked too practiced to be pretend. A desk calendar with 2 words circled next Thursday. Resource fair. Pipeline confirmed. The specialist, Mr. Lang, wore a navy suit that didn't forgive July. He shook our hands like a salesman and offered liquidity options. Ramos showed a badge. Lang's smile didn't slip. It stiffened. "We're a lender," he said. "We only service properly documented trusts." "Good," I said. "Then you'll enjoy showing us your intake packages for these." I slid 3 copies across. Mrs. Donnelly's parcel, 2 choir widows, and a farm outside town. Same font, same blanks. Lang tried a shrug. Independent brokers bring us work. We don't police porches. You do when the porch walks in wearing a badge, Ramos said. The AG's analyst arrived with a canvas case and a polite nod. He asked for a conference room and a scanner, then pulled a subpoena like a magician's handkerchief. We got copies of every loan file with Cypress Partners in the stack, plus logs. Who logged in, when, from what IP. The analyst pointed at a pattern. Applications rushed on Thursdays between 2 and 5 p.m. Resource fair hours. Funding Friday by noon. Cards loaded by 3. I like a clock that confesses. We set a hook. The analyst created a dummy trust packet. Perfect format, fake data, serial numbers that lived only in our folder, and pushed it into Prairie's system under Sunset Family Trust. Then he fired a forensic ping at the approval queue. If Cypress touched it, the server would ring a small bell only we could hear. We didn't wait in chairs. We drove to the county attorney and swore out emergency civil orders. A blanket TRO on any lien or deed touching those parcels, plus a memo to every title desk in the county. No funds on Cypress-originated docs pending review. By lunch, 10 clerks had stuck the printout to their monitors with the same pink tape they use for bake sale flyers. Good enough. Next stop, the strip mall accounting shop we kept seeing on pay stubs. Blue Creek Services. The door chimed and a man in a polo stepped from a back room smelling like microwave soup. I asked for a W-9. He offered a payment plan. Ramos handed him a warrant. He sat down faster than a closing time stool. The back room held a laminator, a ring light, and a box of prepaid cards with a sticky note that read, "Reload. Friday noon." The analyst collected the lot, plus a notebook where someone had written, "Ant holds 7 days. Never call it a sale," in block letters. At 1:12, the analyst's phone buzzed. Our dummy trust had been opened from a laptop registered to our suite 204, then forwarded to Prairie with Lang's initials on the approval note. Fast hands. Sloppy, too. We went back to Prairie without sirens. Ramos asked for Lang. He wasn't at his desk. The receptionist said he'd stepped out for lunch. The analyst pointed at the server log. Lang had just approved 3 files from his mobile. "Where's the funding desk?" I asked. "Back hallway, last door," she said, not quite whispering. We walked in on a scene that looked like a bake sale. Stacks of cashier's checks, envelopes with fresh glue, a cheap camera pointed at hands holding IDs. A clerk froze with a stamp in the air. Ramos laid the TRO copies on the counter like coasters. "All of these are on hold," he said. "Every check, every wire, every card load touching Cypress or Sunland or Bell Trust. Bag and tag." Lang slipped in the side door, face tight. "You don't have authority to freeze clients' funds," he said. "The judge does," Ramos said. He tapped the TRO header. "And your system touched a counterfeit application we placed. That's a bell you can't unring." Lang reached for righteous. I reached for plain. "You ran porch papers and fair signatures through an approval loop that hits Friday cards. You knew the trust names had no beneficiaries listed. You knew the manager entity points to a mailbox. Stop pretending you didn't read your own documents." The clerk set down her stamp and stepped back like it was hot. The analyst collected the checks while Lang called the office counsel, who didn't answer. He put the phone down carefully. "We process documents. We don't investigate upstream malfeasance," he tried. "Then meet downstream consequences," I said, and watched a deputy seal an envelope around $6,000. that would become restitution instead of fuel. We didn't stage a parade. We drove to the courthouse annex and set up 2 tables under a banner that read, Document Day. Not a fair, not a sting. A counter where people brought envelopes and left with locks. The clerk lent us her stamp. The sheriff lent us 2 chairs. The pastor sent coffee strong enough to stand a spoon. They came, not with casseroles. This wasn't a funeral, but with file folders, the elastic bands tired from years in drawers. A rancher with a quitclaim he couldn't read. A widow with pre-qualifications she never meant to sign. A deacon with a cousin already in trouble, 2 counties over. We triaged. Genuine clouds to the legal aid line, fraud flags to the recorder's screen, title freezes where needed, bank passphrases that wouldn't live on Facebook. In the lull, the analyst handed me a printout. Server IPs from Suite 204 talking to Heartland's Hive, then Prairie, then Blue Creek. The arrows sat clean on paper. I wrote 4 words under them. Stop flow, return funds. I like verbs. Evening brought one more errand. The AG filed a petition to seize devices and business records from Prairie and Suite 204. A judge signed it before her tea cooled. Ramos's team executed both without raised voices. Lang left with a lawyer and a calendar full of dates he didn't choose. The owner out of state from the mailbox store appeared in county lockup with a bond he couldn't post before Monday. Nora showed up with counsel and a list of porch addresses. The DA noted cooperation in a margin. By 9, the annex echoed. We stacked leftover flyers, logged final freezes, and taped a red sheet to the clerk's window. No ant trusts, no porch signings. Verify in person. I handed the clerk a roll of the same pink tape from title desks. She smiled and stuck it to her monitor. Back home, I put the day's evidence in the red folder and wrote tomorrow's steps on the fridge. Heartland, charity license review. Prairie, client notices, refund schedule. Blue Creek, card loads. Identify victims, reverse if possible. Church list, 6 yellow names, visit in person. Clinic, put the red flyer on every break room board. Then I sharpened a pencil and underlined a last line. Teach the nurses how to spot a cleanup offer. We're the ones folks ask when they're frightened. We need answers ready. The street was quiet by the time I poured a nightcap of mint tea. Not quiet like forgetting. Quiet like a library after a long day of copying what matters. Bad men built a refinance line with Thursdays and Fridays and a plastic stamp. We cut Thursday off at the knee and froze Friday at the desk. Next week, they'll try Tuesday. We'll be there with a counter, a witness, and coffee that doesn't blink. Part 5. The back door. Fraud doesn't die at a counter. It crawls through side doors. Saturday, 7:10 a.m., my phone lost bars, then the screen spat. SIM not provisioned. That wasn't a glitch. That was a hand on my line. I drove to the clinic, used the landline, and rang Ramos. They're done with deeds, I said. Now they want my 2-factor. Phone shop first, he said. I'll meet you. The Carrier store on Peoria had a banner that promised instant upgrades and a clerk with a smile set to autopilot. I placed my dead phone on the counter and said the magic words. Port out fraud. Freeze the line. Print the request. The clerk's smile sagged. He fetched a manager who wore cologne loud enough to count. The printout showed the play. Emergency replacement due to damage. ID verified by a 9-digit number that wasn't mine, and a temporary number tied to a prepaid handset. Timestamp, 7 minutes before my coffee. They'd almost beaten Saturday traffic. Ramos came in with 2 deputies and a calm that shut doors. "We need the CCTV from opening," he said. The manager tried a shrug. Ramos lifted a warrant. Shrug ended. Footage wasn't Hitchcock. It was crisp. A young woman in a varsity jacket sliding a folder across the counter, the clerk typing, the manager nodding, the woman leaving with a shrink-wrapped SIM and a smile she hadn't earned. The clerk put the ID back in the folder without looking at the photo for more than a heartbeat. I paused the screen and zoomed. The ID's last name: Malloy. Trent's. The first name: Leah. The picture: not her. "Inside help?" I asked. "Or a script," Ramos said. "Either way, we follow the trail." While the deputies bagged footage and logs, I called the carrier's fraud desk from the back office. Words that work: port freeze, no remote changes, in-person only, PIN reset at corporate location. I added a carrier-specific passphrase that no leak list could guess. Aunt B's first car. Locked. Next problem: mail. Porting the number is step 1. Redirecting the mailbox is step 2. I'd already flagged the post office for myself years back, but the widows on our yellow list hadn't. I drove to the main branch and asked the supervisor to scan for change of address requests filed this week on any parcels we'd flagged. He found 3. 2 had been entered online at 1 a.m., the third at a kiosk, for convenience. He printed the holds. We stapled our TRO copy to each and stamped them in red. Fraud. Do not forward. The AG's analyst texted from his lair. Suite 204 laptops show a browser extension that autofills carrier forms with scraped data. He attached a screenshot. Autocomplete lined up like bullets. Last 4 of social, mother's maiden name, favorite teacher. "They bought security questions," I said. "They scraped them," he replied. "Church bulletins, obits, Facebook. Before we talk ethics, we pull the plug." We needed the person who taught clerks to violate policy. That would be a corporate store, not a kiosk. The analyst traced the port-out session to a terminal at the carrier's downtown flagship. 10 lanes, 3 greeters, a back room labeled HOP. Authorized personnel. In a font too confident. We went in plain. Ramos flashed the badge, asked for the general manager, and requested the employee who handled a port at 703 Elsa. A kid barely older than the coffee machine raised his hand. He looked like he'd pass a poli-sci quiz and fail a street test. "Walk me through the script you used," I said. He swallowed. Caller gave the account number, last 4, and the PIN. "And you didn't ask for in-person ID?" "They said they were already here. My lead said if the PIN matches, we move." "Your lead's name?" Ramos asked. He glanced toward the back. "Mr. Carr." Carr came out with a tie knot meant for court, and a voice that had sold too many upgrades. He tried to separate us into rooms with glass walls. Ramos declined. "Pull the recorded call," he said. "Corporate stores record everything." Carr hesitated, then led us to a console. We listened to a voice reading from a sheet. "Urgent replacement. Traveling. Last phone fell in water." And Carr's own baritone approving the port because the answers checked out. He had skipped the in-store ID required after failed 2-factor step. I pointed at the policy in his handbook. He closed it gently. "Here's what happens next," Ramos said. "We audit every port you approved this month. If the pattern holds, you'll help us fix it. If it doesn't, counsel will keep you company." Carr's shoulders lost an inch of height. We set bait. The analyst created a decoy number with a fat account balance and an easy target profile: widowed, mortgage-free, visible on church rosters. Then he flagged it at corporate as no change without live ID. An hour later, the downtown switchboard pinged. Caller requesting urgent port. Carr pushed the request to a back terminal. The analyst's trap logged the machine ID and the user. Not Carr. The assistant manager, Leah Carr. Family business. Ramos moved quick. No cuffs on the floor. No spectacle. Leah sat in a small office with a clipboard and an attorney on speaker. She lasted 12 minutes before the attorney told her to stop talking and Ramos told her to start cooperating. She chose cooperation. Trent pays in gift cards, she said. We approve ports inside the threshold and look away if the pin matches. It always matches because he knows the answers. How? I asked. He sends a mailer, she said. Looks like a church survey. Asks for maiden names, towns, favorite teacher, first pet. People fill it because it says legacy book. I felt my jaw set. We had cut one pipeline. He dug another under the fence. We pulled the mail piece from her purse. Willow Legacy. Share your story for the church archives. A genuine printer did it. A genuine photographer took the choir picture on the header. Only the reply envelope gave it away. P.O. Box 117 again. We took the box, the art files, the mailing list. The printer down the street confirmed cash, rush, no questions asked. Now we needed to unhook the bank end before any stolen codes did damage. We called the 4 biggest banks in county and asked for their security chiefs. Not fraud desks. Chiefs. We gave them a 2-hour briefing on porch signings, ports, and legacy mailers. We asked them to turn on 2 things county-wide for seniors. Step-up authentication. No text codes without a phone call. And in-branch reset only. For any profile that hit a port freeze. One bank hesitated. I told a story about a widow losing her Social Security check for a month. The chief moved. By late afternoon, the analyst pushed a county-wide alert to carriers. Block any port tied to names in our list. Require 2 pieces of ID and a selfie that matches the ID mug. Not perfect. Better. We ran cleanup. We called the 6 yellow households. We knocked doors. We permanently froze mail forwards and phone ports after showing what the forms looked like. We taped a list to refrigerators. Bank branch, sheriff, recorder, pastor, clinic. 5 numbers, big font. We wrote a passphrase together for each household. Not anyone's maiden name, not a pet, not a street. My favorite was a woman who chose left-handed ladle, because her late husband carved one and signed the handle. Evening brought a small win. The carrier restored my line, and my phone blinked back to life like a camping lantern after you find the right switch. Texts flooded in, most of them noise, one from the choir. Miss Evie, did we still need extra pies for Tuesday? Always. Back at the station, Leah signed a statement and handed over a list of ports she'd approved. 3 dozen numbers. We matched them to our victim sheet, then to Heartland's lead list. Everything touched. Next week, Ramos said, rubbing the bridge of his nose, we pull Heartland's license and ask a judge to shut them pending review. Next week, I said, we run a workshop at the carrier store with a real manager who reads policy out loud to every clerk. On my fridge, I wrote the punch list. Carrier, policy posted at registers. No ID, no port. Churches, kill legacy mailer, announce scam from pulpits, banks, step up live call for seniors countywide, post office, flag batch changes from P.O. Box 117, clinic, hand out red cards with 5 numbers and a blank passphrase line fraud had come through the back door. We braced it with a 2x4 and wrote the cut list on the wood. Tomorrow we'd sand it smooth and bolt it to the frame so tight even a clever cousin couldn't wiggle past. I wound the kitchen clock and listened to the tick settle the house. Out front, the street lamp hummed. Not peace, preparation. They'd try a new angle. Online notaries, estate sweepstakes, some other costume. Fine. We have counters, witnesses, and coffee. We have a county that now says no in unison. Paper wolves hate that sound. Part 6. The hearing. Monday wasn't for speeches, it was for signatures. At 8 a.m., Sharp, Ramos, the AG team, and I walked into a paneled room at the state office building where licenses go to live or die. The placard said, Administrative Hearing, Charitable Solicitations, and Telecom Compliance. Good. 2 levers, 1 pull. Heartland showed up with a lawyer in a suit, a half-size optimistic, and a binder thick enough to hope. Prairie Refinance sent compliance in navy and pearls. The carrier sent a regional manager who had learned the phrase, "Thank you for the feedback," and never let go of it. I took the back bench with a yellow pad and a thermos. The hearing officer, a woman who could sharpen pencils with her gaze, opens the file. We will determine whether Heartland Community Services license remains in effect, whether Prairie can operate under current policies, and whether the carrier followed port-out rules. No one exhaled. The AG's analyst ran a clean timeline. List scrape porch signing dummy trusts. Friday cash-outs, port-outs, text code theft. He didn't sell drama. He sold timestamps. He held up the legacy mailer. The hearing officer compared the reply address to our favorite P.O. box, raised an eyebrow, and wrote 3 words, intent to deceive. Heartland's lawyer tried moral fog. Public records are lawful. We merely curate. Cure it into wolves' mouths, the hearing officer said, not looking up. Where is your owner? In transit, the lawyer said. License suspended pending appearance, she replied, clicking a pen. 1 lever, half pulled. Prairie's turn. Compliance Pearl smiled like porridge. We finance only fully executed documents, she said. The analyst slid over our bait file. Perfect form, invented trust, serials we controlled, stamped approved by Mr. Lang at 1:12 p.m. Friday. Pearl read, paused, and said, We will immediately halt all originations involving third-party managers and require beneficiary verification in person. Not enough, the hearing officer said. Effective today. No funding within 72 hours of a signature, mandatory beneficiary call with recording, and a fraud bond posted by close of business. Pearl swallowed, nodded. Prairie lived, under a leash. The carrier tried policy soup. The regional manager referenced thresholds, KPIs, customer experience. Ramos put the recorded call on a small speaker. Leah's script, cars override, and the phrase, pin matches, proceed. The officer flipped to the policy page I'd highlighted with a green tab. ID in hand after failed 2-factor. Green meets black ink beats corporate fog. Regional, she said. This isn't a memo problem. It's a culture problem. For 60 days, no remote ports county-wide without video ID matched to database faces. Post the rule at registers. Audit every port you approved in the last quarter, and make your victims whole. You will return stolen service days in cash, not store credit. The manager said, "Yes, ma'am," like a man who had just learned please. We left with paper that had teeth. Heartland, suspended. Prairie, restricted and bonded. Carrier, gagged and audited. Not a parade, a reset. Next, mop up. We drove to a warehouse on the edge of town where auctioneers sell abandoned units and police store what they'd rather not keep. In a metal cage sat Suite 204's gear, tagged and quiet. The analyst plugged in one tower and pulled a file labeled Quota, Q3, 12 units, 200,000 target, a smiling emoji like a bruise. Names attached to green checks matched our lead sheet. We printed restitution lists, not press releases. I spent lunch at the bank with 6 widows and a ranch couple. We set step-up calls, not codes. We wrote passphrases with odd words their grandchildren wouldn't guess. Blue thimble, dry creek, left-handed ladle. We swapped debit cards for new ones pre-flagged, for core, in-branch resets only. We put a red card with 5 numbers on each fridge with a magnet that wouldn't fall. Afternoon, I ran training at the Carrier store. 20 clerks, 1 nervous manager, a stack of laminated cards that said, "No ID, no Portian font, you could see from a taxi." I played Leah's legacy trick, showed the fake mailer, and pointed at the step they'd skip when the line stretched. If your lead tells you to ignore policy, call the number on the back of this card, I said, tapping the state hotline. Let them own the decision on a recorded line. The manager looked like he'd swallowed a tack and nodded anyway. Evening, we did a different kind of service. Document triage. At the church gym. No devotionals. 12 folding tables, 3 copiers, a line down the wall. We ran people through like an ER. Intake. Do you have a deed, a trust, a bank text you don't recognize? Vitals. Parcel number, bank name, phone carrier. Interventions. Title freeze, passphrase, port lock, fraud flag. Deacon stamped. Nurses explained. The sheriff took reports with a pen that didn't hesitate. A farmer in a sweat-dark cap pulled a crumpled paper from his pocket, an authorization to speak, with his signature traced so well even he doubted himself. I set it next to a clean copy and a magnifier, showed him the loop in his G that he'd made the same for 50 years and the forger had drawn like a schoolchild. He stared, nodded once, and said, "Burn it?" "Staple it," I said. "Evidence first, fire later." The last walk-in was a man I didn't expect. Trent Malloy with his tie less crisp and his eyes too bright. He didn't sit. He stood across the table like a man testing ice. "I want a deal," he said to Ramos, who had just sat down with coffee. "Names for leniency." Ramos didn't blink. "Names, flow, accounts," he said. "And you start tonight." Trent looked at me when he answered. "There's a bigger list," he said. Heartland is a franchise. We buy from a guy in Dallas who buys from a guy in Florida who buys from 2 funeral homes and 3 newspaper CMS back doors. "CMS?" the analyst asked, alert. "Content system," Trent said. "They get previews of obits before they publish. We pay for a feed." The analyst's fingers were already moving. Subpoenas, not suspicions. We set Trent with a recorder and a blank legal pad and watched him write pipelines and usernames and the handle of the man who sold him the CMS feed. He thought he was saving himself. He was saving time. At 10, the gym echoed. We stacked the last flyers, powered down copiers, and added 3 sticky notes to the big board. Florida feed, Dallas broker, Funeral home leak. I like new doors you can close. On my way out, Sister Alma snagged my sleeve. Miss Evie, can we keep the tables up till Saturday? Keep them up till Christmas, I said, and post the red flyer on every bulletin board between here and the river. Home, porch light, mint tea. I laid the day's orders on the table and wrote tomorrow's list. AG, emergency injunction on data brokers. Notify CMS vendors. Carrier, record policy script and play it nightly. Funeral homes, physical lock on their OBIT terminals. Staff training. Banks, restitution workflow. Checks in hand, not promises. Clinic, add document triage to the monthly calendar. I sharpened a pencil and added one more line. Find the Dallas broker before Friday. Men like that move on weekends. The street hummed soft. Not quiet from forgetting, quiet from systems clicking into place. Folks think justice is a gavel. Mostly it's a stack of forms filled right. A clerk who says no, and a room where lies have to survive timestamps. We gave the county that room. Tomorrow we'll pull Florida's thread and Dallas's knot. After that, I'll be back on the porch with a hose and a list, ready for whatever mask the wolves wear next. They change costumes. We keep the lights bright. Part 7. The Net. Friday started with subpoenas and ended with boxes. Between those, we pulled 3 threads, Florida, Dallas, and the funeral homes, and made a net that held. The AG filed an emergency injunction against 2 data brokers tied to Heartland's compassion lists. A judge signed before 9. We served the order through their registered agents and their payment processors. Money dries quicker than morals. The CMS vendor in Florida got a preservation notice and a visit. Their log showed a backdoor user pulling pre-publish obituaries at 4 a.m. The handle matched Trent's note. The vendor's security chief traced the login to a contractor who liked cash and short passwords. We took his laptop, not his excuses. Dallas next. The broker's office was a co-working cube with a skyline poster and a ficus that had seen too much. Name on the lease: Plain Circle Media. He sold community engagement streams that smelled like scraped bulletin boards. Ramos brought Texas counterparts. They brought a warrant and a cart. We left with a RAID array, 3 phones, and a notebook that translated his euphemisms. Legacy, obit feed, anchor leads, widows with paid property taxes, warm porch, living alone. I don't dramatize. I label. Funeral homes were simpler and sadder. 2 directors had clicked a link that promised AI proofing for obits and handed their login to a template thief. We met them in break rooms, not interrogation rooms. We taped a physical key only tag to every obit terminal and added 2 steps to their routine. Print a daily list of logins and let the grandkid who knows routers teach them how to update firmware. They brought cookies. I don't eat during work. I packed them for later. By noon, the carrier's audit spit a list. 187 suspect ports in 90 days, clustered around 2 stores and 4 employees. The regional manager read the results like a man counting shingles in a hailstorm. He didn't say feedback. He said refunds and terminations and training calendar posted. Prairie showed up with checks, actual paper, for returned fees, plus a signed consent to an independent monitor for 6 months. Compliance Pearl's pen didn't shake. The fraud bond posted cleared by wire. I checked the number twice and underlined it with a pencil I bring to rooms where people lie to themselves. Afternoon, we ran. Restitution intake. At the annex. No speeches. 10 windows. Numbers called. Cashiers who knew names. Widows with red folders got their fees back, and a card that read, "Port locked. Title frozen. Passcode set." A rancher walked out, held up his check like a fishing license, and said, "Next time, I call before I sign." That's all I want to hear. Trent wrote for 6 hours. Names, handles, payment flows. He diagrammed affiliate fares in 2 counties over and a mailbox farm 3 states away. He thought he was clever for remembering everything. I was glad he liked notes. The DA offered a deal. Conspiracy and theft, restitution mandatory, ban from fiduciary work 10 years, no internet access without monitoring during probation. He blinked twice, looked at the recorder, and said, "Yes." Nora pled to notary violations with cooperation. She'll be teaching the class on what not to stamp for a year under supervision. Mr. Lang took a suspension and a lifetime ban from any check-signing role. Heartland's owner made it to town after lawyers ran out of calendar. He walked into a room with 3 agencies and 1 whiteboard labeled Pipeline. He tried public information again. The hearing officer tried patience for 5 minutes and then tried his license. Suspended, pending a case that will end with a fine that hurts and a clause that says, "Never again." We didn't do a parade. We did saturation. Pastors preached 5 sentences on Sunday. No porch signings, no ants. Counters, witnesses, coffee. Banks pushed a banner live on every terminal. Step-up call required for seniors. Carrier stores taped "No ID, no port" at every register and played the policy script over the intercom at 10, 2, and 4. Title desks posted a pink-taped note. No funding within 72 hours. You win with repetition, not applause. We ran the last document triage. Saturday morning, lines shorter, faces steadier. We added a table labeled Passcode Practice, where folks picked phrases no data broker would guess. The winners: barbed wire pie, third pew left, Bia's blue pail. I wrote them on paper, not phones, and told them where to hide the card. By evening, the pipeline's noise had dropped to a hum under the floor. The AG's analyst showed me a dashboard. Ports near 0, refi holds catching every Cypress clone, lead lists dead at the source. He smiled with half his face. We both know quiet isn't forever. Quiet is a reset. Monday, sentencing on the first wave. The judge read orders like inventory. Trent Malloy. Restitution, probation with monitoring, ban on estate services, 1,000 hours of community work stapling red flyers and explaining why people should ignore men like him. Nora Bell. Fine. Coursework. Supervised notary renewals only after completion. Mr. Lang. No financial authority. Compliance audits if he ever touches a desk with numbers again. Heartland owner. To be continued in civil court with teeth, the Sassing carrier. Audit complete by quarter end, refunds mailed, policy change certified. Prairie. Monitor reports monthly. Any violation triggers full stop. We kept the gym tables up. We changed the banner to the clinic counter, first Saturday, and set it on the calendar through winter. Nurses learned to add paper to their patient checklists. Deed, phone, bank. Deacons learned to ask where before why. Clerks learned to say no with a smile and point to a laminated card with a hotline. I went home and made a small sign for my porch. Documents go to counters. Under it, I taped a list. Recorder, bank, sheriff, church office, clinic 5 numbers, big font. If someone wants a shortcut, hand them a chair. Shortcuts love kitchens. Truth loves counters. Before bed, I opened the closet and looked at Walter's ledger. I left it there. Spine cracked, lines ruled tight. Numbers don't bend toward justice. People do. You teach them where to stand, when to read out loud, when to call, and how to stall a smile with a single sentence. We'll do this at the counter. If you're still taking notes, here's the last page. 1. Freeze first, argue later. Title caution. Bank in branch locks, portholes. 2. Counters, witnesses, coffee. Fraud hates fluorescent light and slow reading. 3. No rush, no porch, no ants. Those 3 words will save a deed. 4. Teach the system. Clerks, tellers, carriers, policy in plain font, taped high. 5. Maintain the habit. Monthly triage, posted numbers, passphrases on paper. That's the whole net. No speeches, no saints. A county that says, know the same way, every time. The street stays quiet because we keep it that way. With forms that bite, phones that don't port, and people who read lines out loud. Mint teas steeping. The copier will jam Tuesday. Someone will bring me a folder with a bad banner on it Wednesday. We'll sit at a counter and read until it quits lying. Then we'll add one more line to the flyer and tape it up with pink.